I worked for World Vision for 23 years. 9 of them I was communications director. 7 of them I was national director in Uganda. And the last 3 of those years I was regional director for East Africa, based in Nairobi. There was a major restructuring in World Vision, and suddenly I was out of employment. But in my 23 years of working with World Vision, I'd seen a number of transitions from junior staff to senior staff. In fact, my last employment, I was laying off national directors. And as people were leaving the organization, they would behave differently. Some of them would just brush it off their shoulder and move on. But this morning, I had lunch. I was at a meeting and I sat next to a former World Vision staff who left World Vision 17 years ago. When I became national director, I was one of those who left. And he told me that I'm happy to sit next to you, and today I'm going to shake your hand. Because when I left World Vision, my contract ended and it was not renewed. I was traumatized. And for a long time, I've hated you. In fact, I had met him at some other function and didn't want to shake my hand. But he said, 17 years later, I've recovered. I can now shake your hand. There are a number of people who left. And they went and flourished. It was part of the attitude. Now, as working with World Vision and seeing many people leave, I knew that one day my time would come. And I didn't want to be one of those who would leave shaking and throwing tantrums. Because some did throw tantrums, many were unprepared. So as national director, I organized training for those who are reaching almost retirement on life beyond World Vision. There is life after World Vision. And so we organized a series of training for our staff, preparing them for retirement long before they retire. And I was taking notes. I wasn't thinking of retirement, but I was taking notes. And so after I left World Vision, I thought of what should I do next. I was 50. I had been CEO in Uganda, one of the largest NGOs. I worked as a regional director. And I thought I don't want to go and compete with young people shuffling my CVs around. Let me look at my skill set. What is it that I have that I can use in my next life? I looked at my skills and things I had learned over time. I have a Master of Science in Journalism, and my first job was as communications director. So I had whole sets of media, public relations, corporate communication. I'd also worked as a manager for a long time. And when I was a manager, I decided to go for further studies. And I did a Master of Leadership and Organizational Management. So I decided to go into consulting at 2 levels, 2 tracks, communications and management. But I never done consulting. And yet when I read in the newspapers, as they advertise for consulting, they're saying write a technical proposal and a financial proposal and show expressions of interest, a whole new language. So I looked around, and UMI, Uganda Management Institute, was organizing training in consulting skills. And it only costed me $500,000 and it's one of my best investments. So I went for 1 week at UMI and learned how to write a proposal, how to bid, and how to write that language. And then that has helped me. And then I decided, talking about networking, I said, well, what networks do I have? Because having worked in the NGO sector and also working with the donors and the UN, I had many friends and I had many colleagues. So the first thing I did was to send word out. We wrote my CV and I sent word out in NGOs and in the UN saying I'm now available as a consultant. I also joined Facebook because I had been so busy as executive to look at Facebook. You know, it was my kids on Facebook. So I joined Facebook, I looked up all my friends who are now in the corporate world, and guess what? My first contract consulting for the UN came from Facebook.
I think there's a hand clap for that one.
Because one of my friends on Facebook works for World Food Program, posted something. He said, "Isn't there some decent communicator in this town?" So I said, "Inbox, what do you mean? I'm here." We've been looking for a serious consultant, we couldn't find one. I said, "I'm here." He said, "Fine, take your CV to UNDP." And I got a foot in. And for the next 4 years, I worked as a consultant for UNICEF, but a foot from there. But I got my retirement benefits. Now, before that, when we did this orientation for our staff on preparing for retirement, the importance of saving and investment was important for us. And we had a provident fund. We had a staff savings fund. And I invested a lot of money in that staff savings. And then I would get a loan and pay back. I knew that I would need shelter. Because if you retire and you have no home, you're in trouble. If you're still paying rent. So the first thing I invested in while I was working through the staff savings was to have a house in Kampala. So that if I retire, I have somewhere to live. I got my package from World Vision, and a lot of ideas came into my mind. I've never done business, and so going on a trip to Dubai or India was going to be a big risk. And I knew people from the statistics who had lost their money within 2 years. People were helping them to invest. So I took my retirement package, I took my NSSF money. If you are 50 and you don't work for 1 year, you can get you don't have to be 55. So I took my retirement benefit from World Vision, I took my NSSF, and I had learned that don't put all your investments in one basket, because if that basket is kicked, you're in trouble. So I took a chunk of that money and bought houses for rent, so that at the end of the month, I could get rental income. I took part of the money, I put it in treasury bills and treasury bonds, as well as fixed deposit, so that it could mature at different times. Because as somebody who had earned a salary for 23 years, not having money coming was a nightmare. So I'm having the best of my life because I do consulting, I have investments, I travel, I enjoy my grandchildren. So retirement is great.
I've been working for the Federation of Gun Employers for the last 25 years. Oops. And I'm stepping down on the 30th of November this year. I clocked 55 some years back, and I got my package from NSSF. Within 3 weeks, I had got that money. But of course, I didn't eat it. Yes, I was still getting a paycheck because the retirement age was 60, which I will be on the 30th of November this year. So I reinvested that money. It is still making more money for me. And I continue this saving with NSSF. So, Richard, after 30th November, I'm collecting my second part. Now, I started employment with a trade union, and I was the first graduate to work for the trade union. I got that job myself. I was not helped by parents at all. But before I got that job, I used to bake buns and sell them to the banks. There was no job then. So when I got into that job, I still continued with my selling of buns to the banks. Because the union I worked with was a union representing interests of the bankers. So I had access to them. Now, right from my first job up to the job I'm leaving on 30th November this year, I did not have a very good paycheck. And because of that, I started right from day one to be innovative, to supplement that small paycheck. Now, I got a lot of invitations to be employed in the bank. And I recall in my senior 6 vacation, I had a temporary job with Uganda Commercial Bank, which was giving me some good money, which prepared me to go to Makerere. But for some reasons, I didn't want a job which kept me on the seat from morning to evening. So my looking for a job was not really money, but a job where I would find job satisfaction. So I had to stick to a job which was paying me little money, but which I enjoyed doing, and which gave me an opportunity to venture into other things. So right from day one, I had a garden where we would plant food so that we don't spend money on buying food, and then the small paycheck pays for other things. Now, my husband, Mr. Sendabuya,
is he here tonight?
He's not. Unfortunately, Joanne didn't ask me to bring him. Otherwise, I would have gladly brought him. He was working in Uganda Commercial Bank. Of course, a manager. We are staying in a bank house in Ntinda. Of course, there was a vehicle which would pick us in the morning and the children. And now the commercial bank takeover and all came about. And the job disappeared. He was 35 by then. We had young children. The eldest was 80 years old. And I had my small paycheck. So as everything happens, we had to move out of the luxurious house from Ntinda to our uncompleted shelter in Kanyanya. No electricity, no water. And the bank vehicle was no more. Okay? So this is the corporate side. What? So here was
There also.
a young woman with very young children and an unemployed husband at 35. Now, it really had to make a lot of planning. One thing I realized, I think we women are more enterprising. Normally, when men lose employment,
I need to see the men clapping for that.
35 years, they get so demoralized, so depressed, and if you don't have a strong woman to back you behind, that's when they really deteriorate and disappear. But Mr. Sendabuya was lucky. So we had to struggle. Lucky enough, Matthias was working in the bank, but he's an artist. So while he was working in the bank, he was also a briefcase printer. And so we knew he had that, so we had to find a way of creating a business which would occupy him. So the little money I was earning and what he had saved in UCB and what he got from his NSSF, he was able to start a company, St. Christian Graphics, which is going up to now and which has kept him. Now, I would have stepped down 5 years back, but as Joanne says in her book, I had so many fears. Yes, I knew I had that money in NSSF, but then I said, yeah, but still, how will I make it? So I said, okay, since the retirement is 60, let me hang on up to 60. And at 60, I will do what? I will step. Again, 60 is coming, and I was still getting a lot of persuasions. But you've built the federation from nothing to where it is now. Who are you leaving it with? I said, no, I'm not going to listen to any of that. I'm not the federation. The federation can continue without me. I have to move out. So moving out, where am I going? Now, the experiences we've gone through with my husband made me make one resolution. My children are not going to look for employment. I've got boys. So we've trained them to employ themselves. So each one of them have started their own companies. The young one actually has 2 companies. He's in catering business. The elder one is in printing like his father. But these companies had to be supported. So the money I've been saving, I've been injecting in the businesses of those young men to make them survive. And then I'm a partner and a director in those companies. So when I leave, I'm going to put a leg in those companies. I have an office. I also, of course, St. Christian Graphics is also there. I've already created a space where I'm going to put my desk, so I will sit there. I'm not going to be unemployed.
I used to tell myself many years ago that if you have good money on your bank account, on a current account, I do. You're not thinking enough. Money shouldn't be on your bank account, it should be invested in something. All of us need to be mathematicians. Even if you're not very good at mathematics, you need to compute. And I want to tell you something about a compound annual growth rate, CAGR. In case you have Google,
Compound what?
Compound annual growth rate.
Okay.
Compound annual growth rate. In case you have, just Google it. You don't have to know the formula, how to calculate it. But it's important for you to use that formula every time you're comparing investments you've done over the past. The piece of land you bought in Alia at 10 million in 2001, it's now 150 million. You feel very happy about it after 16 years. Very proud of yourself. But if you put 150 million, then and 10 million after about 16 years, you'd be surprised that the annual average return is about 12%. Now, is 12% good or not? There was a time you could borrow money from the bank, buy a piece of land. The cost of interest was lower than the capital appreciation of the piece of land. Not anymore. The space for what to invest in is reducing. Treasury bill rates have now collapsed to about 10, 11%. But just a few months ago, 2016, February, around elections where people were talking about JPAM and all this, interest rates were about 23%, 20%. People were thinking about migrating, others were buying 5-year bonds locked in at 20%. Now they're getting that interest for the next 5 years. And guess when that bond is going to retire? Just before the next election. When the rates will go up again. If you follow the cycle from 2000, every towards the election, the rates just go up. And that's why I say you must be mathematicians. Just follow the trends, look at the graphs, get advisors, and you know where to invest. Now, you think about investing in rental units, very good, it's good to diversify, well done, Robbie. But if you're to use the same calculator, the CAGR, you'd be able to compare whether you're earning more from your rental units, notwithstanding the headache of, the plumbing is not working. And, they call you in the middle of a meeting and tell you about all sorts of things. Some live without paying, and I think the recovery for rental units could be about 13 or 15 years. So if you invest in something that can pay you back within 10 years, if you invest in a property, whether you're going to buy it or build it, if you can pay you back your capital investment within 10 years, that's a fantastic investment. Because the underlying capital growth is about 5%, 5 to 7%, plus the 10% per annum. I'm just, equities tend to perform a lot better, but I think the gains for equities happen a lot more during the initial public offers. There's still room. If you talk to investment advisors, they'll tell you which equities are good to invest in, whether in Uganda or in Kenya. The thing I just want to leave with you is that every time you're going to make an investment decision, however experienced you are, there's always that fear that comes into your heart. It's like bathing in cold water. Before you get into a shower, you're really petrified, you're whistling, you're running around. But eventually when you get in there, you start asking yourself, why was I afraid? Because you're actually enjoying the cold shower, isn't it? So just, overcome that fear, be courageous. Do your calculations, get to, always pray for wisdom before you make decisions. I've been praying for that for I don't know, God knows how long. From the time I was leaving university, that was one of the key prayers I used to have, wisdom and favor, because there's so much that happens in your life that you have no control over at all. I'm standing here before you, CEO, Capital Markets Authority. If you ask me where I would be 5 years ago, Dr. Magara knows, Mr. Wavum knows, I would never have known, and they really know the history. So standing here is just a testimony. So there's so much we have no control over. I think 50-70% of what we end up being or doing is just because of divine providence.
We talk about the issues of retirement, the issues of investment, and of course having an advantage and opportunity to listen people who have retired, people who are preparing people for retirement, and of course a whole lot of experience. And of course, he mentioned a very good thing of diversification. You know, when we were doing finance, I remember we talked about managing risk, and it is a thing that he has perfected. And of course, when it comes to investment and when it comes to banks, many people fear banks. And usually when people talk about banks, they think about loans. Every time you say there is a bank, say, how are they going to lend us money? People never think about savings, not knowing that there is quite a lot that you can get by saving, putting your money in a bank. Banks have different opportunities that you can get. He talked about diversification, he talked about a regular income. A bank can avail you an opportunity of getting a regular income when you've retired. For example, you can do a fixed deposit account whereby you ask a bank that every month, give me my interest. That will avail you that regular income. Again, it goes with the negotiations. Most people don't understand what banks can do. And some people don't know that they can negotiate with banks. Currently, we have what we call key facts document. Those of you who have worked with banks, every time you go to a bank and you want a service, you are now obliged to sign what we call a key facts document. This is the one which stipulates the features, conditions, terms of the service, including interest rate, including whether it is floating or declining, so that at the end of the day you don't say, now the rates have changed, I've seen my interest has also changed, because you didn't understand what you were going for. So now banks give you an opportunity to be able to understand what you are going in for, whether fixed deposit, whether you want to do a medium term, kind of investment, whether you want to, if it is borrowing again, whether you want to borrow long term. That's why banks usually are accused of being slow in giving out money, and they always prefer to go to money lenders. Money lenders don't care at whatever project you are going for, but banks will sit down with you and analyze and determine whether, first of all, you have the experience. If you've just retired, I'm glad you didn't go for business. You made the right choice. We don't know business, especially corporates. You know where you've been. You don't know what's going on in Chikugo. You will get out with your money. You think you can board a flight to India, bring the merchandise, fill up a shop. It won't work because you don't know. And this is what the banks will always tell you. You haven't been in that thing, you don't have the experience, therefore the risk is high, we can't give you money. Then you will say these banks, they don't know what they are doing. Banks always try to understand whether you have the capacity, first of all, to take this money and be able to bring it back. If you are doing business, do you have the experience? Are you there? For us corporates, we are always in offices. You are not present where your business is. There's no way you can run a business where you are not. There's what they call telephone farming. You can farm and then it is on phone. Are the things okay? Have you injected the cows and so on? Whether somebody has done it or not, you don't know. And before you know, there is nothing on the ground because you are not there. So when a bank gets into such a position to understand that you are not present, they won't give you their money. They are helping you to learn, to understand where you can invest and which risks you want to take on. So banks give you a lot of opportunities. Come and work with the banks. Get to understand what the banks do. They are there for you. And because of you, they exist. If you are not there, if you are not doing business, currently we have now a lull in the economy. Enterprises are not doing so well. Demand is low. Of course, banks are also suffering because they can't lend. You can hear that private sector credit hasn't been growing the way it should. And everybody wants that to grow. Because if there's no private sector credit, there will be no investments. And if there are no investments, there are no jobs. And if there are no jobs, you know what you'll be ending up with. So it is important that you help the banks to do what they're supposed to do. They charge you the interest rates they charge you, and then you say they are very high. No bank will want to charge you, because there are many banks and there is competition. But they charge you what they charge you because of the perceived risk, because of the costs involved in lending that money to you. The day we will have costs come down, the day we'll have you become a good payer, so that default rates come down, will eventually have these rates come down to the level where you want them to be. When you hear of the interest rates in Europe, in fact some of them are negative, somebody will come here and say, why don't we go and borrow from here and bring the money here? But there is what they call the sovereign risk. The risk of those countries is different from the risk of this country. In fact, if they bring the euros or the dollars to lend them to this economy, it will be a totally different rate, because the risks involved here are different from the other environments, and people need to understand all that. And this is where it all comes to where we are. What are the dynamics? What are the banks doing? What shouldn't they do? You know, they are not there to see people suffer, because if they lend money to people and they are not able to pay, or if there are no people to lend money to, they are in no business. They will get your savings, if at all you've been able to save. Our savings rate are one of the lowest. You, the corporates, don't save. People in Kikubo don't save. We are talking of about a saving rate of about 14% to GDP, one of the lowest, and most of it is NSSF, the mandatory one. So where do you expect the banks to get the money to be able to lend at a low rate? It becomes a very, very big challenge. So there are a lot of opportunities. If you meaningfully come and you work with the banks, they will be able to help you. There's no economy that has ever grown without banks. We need to know that. Thank you very much.
A lot has been said, and I think quite a lot needs to be heard about diversification. A couple of cases come up. When you talk of equity, and Keith, I don't mean to water down your comments, but a couple of things come up to mind. Safaricom comes up to mind. Global financial crisis comes up to mind. A friend of mine who did invest quite a lot in Nigeria, they've been doing a lot around the money markets. He told me a story how he had grown up to about $150,000, and overnight his investments went down to $20,000 because of the global financial crisis. I got involved quite early in age, invested in business, and I borrowed money as a banker at very interesting rates, and I lost all the money because of telephone business. So I think diversification really is something that we need to think about quite carefully, and I think that's where Robbie's advice comes in, spreading money across the basket does quite a lot. Lastly, I don't think I subscribe to the concept of retirement, because I think it kind of introduces a stopping point, and yet I believe it's more of a transition from one form in society to another, because we move from one form to another. So I think it's really that as well. We have quite a lot of society paradigms to deal with, and I think that's the bigger question. What can we do as a society to transition our thinking? Because what I think we have is a bigger societal problem than just a corporate problem. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Interesting thoughts.
I retired in 2014, and up to now I've not got my gratuity. And I have an auntie also who retired in 1994. She was working in the medical, and she has not yet got her gratuity. I didn't get on the pension payroll until after 8 months. And even then, after I'd gotten it, I think for about 4 months, they stopped giving it out, and I had to go chasing it again, and I was paid again after 6 months. And like last month, we are not paid, July, we are not paid, I think, until almost the end of this month. So we have not been paid August. So if you are not prepared for retirement, it can be very difficult, especially for those who retire and they still have children to educate, or they don't have where to live, you don't have a house built yet, and you are thinking that you use your gratuity to build. So that was my challenge.
It's recommended that you don't expose more than 10% of your net worth in equities. When you're younger, you can expose 15%, and you start heading towards retirement, it's better to start reducing that. And when you get to 50, it might even be wise not to be in equities at all unless you're planning to write them in your will. That's not a bad thing, by the way. I mean, I've known people who have inherited equities from their parents, so it's a good thing. So I fully agree with it. Safaricom is now at 26. It was at 5 shillings at the time of the IPO. That's about 5 times since 2008. Yes, those dips happen, but you can ride the waves much better. Even within equities, it's good to diversify. Don't get all your 10% of your net worth and put it in one stock. Get 4 or 5 stocks and spread that 10% of your net worth across equities. Thanks.
Yeah, I quite agree with Paul's statement that retiring is transitioning from one form of employment to another. In fact, the terminology now is retiring. You are removing the old tires and putting on new tires.
I discovered that from when I stopped working for World Vision, I have 45 years more to live. if I die at my preferred age. So you can't talk about retirement for 45 years. Some people ask me that you retired. No, I'm not retired. I stopped working for World Vision. Doesn't mean that I've retired. Life must continue, and there are many ways. You slow down, you do more of the things you love doing because you don't have to do them, but you have to be more meaningful and leave a legacy. So let's not talk about retirement, but let's talk about retiring, putting on new tires, because the journey continues. Thank you.
To engage Joan Mugenzi, call 0755 000 909 or email info@imaginemeafrica.com.